Welcome to Sales Bites by Journey, where we talk about everything you need to know to be a killer at sales. I'm your host, Will Jenkins. Let's get it.
Hello and welcome to Sales Bites by Journey. My name is Will Jenkins, CEO and founder of Journey, and I am joined today by Gabe Ribeiro, Senior Director of Partnerships and Marketing at Hey Bubba. And I must say, I did not know how to pronounce that correctly until about 35 seconds ago, but I love to make sure I say people's names right, so I appreciate you for giving me the heads up.
For sure, man. Yeah, especially after a decade of friendship. This is
Correct.
the venue to ask. And yeah, Portuguese is a little tricky. The R's are kind of sound like H's. So you nailed it though, Ribeiro. Thanks for having me on, man. Will, you're a legend as well, in this space. And my name's Gabe Ribeiro. We met at Coyote Logistics when I started there a while ago. I've been in the transportation and freight tech space for about 15 years now. Started at Coyote in 2011, went through some acquisitions, worked on the sales team, both carrier and customer facing. Also worked on the asset side for a while, moved abroad and worked in Brazil in the first 3PL brokerage back in 2017 after the UPS acquisition. And now, sorry, I need to drink some water too. I saw you over there.
Yeah.
As well. I got my little $1 million cups here. It's this community thing that we do in Ann Arbor. But the past 4 years, I've been in the freight tech space. So excited to be on here and share some insights.
Beautiful, man. Well, I appreciate you taking some time to jam with us today. Before we dive in, let's talk about your fun fact. What you got for us?
You're probably going to hear it, and you probably heard it already in just the past. English is my second language. I was born in Brazil, and we immigrated to Michigan in 1992. So sometimes my brain, I guess you would say in AI now, that it hallucinates. With sometimes I'm thinking in Portuguese, and then I'm speaking in English, and vice versa. So you'll see me slip up or say something that's very out of left field. But it's mostly because the processing time sometimes for me, with English being the second language, it makes it for a fun conversation.
Awesome. Well, I hope that we get a couple of hallucinations today as we get into some fun sales bites, man. We're going to dive in and talk about pivoting with go-to-market trends. So I'll go ahead and let you take it, and I'll ask some questions.
Yeah. Again, there's so much to talk about when it comes to sales in general. And I think the whole revenue department from the last 5 or 10 years has changed so much, where it's all these departments are kind of working cohesively. And there's, between marketing, business development, partnerships, and sales, all of it's kind of generating revenue in certain aspects. So I really wanted to talk about kind of the trends and using them as signals. I worked at a B2B SaaS company about 5 years ago, and we really used the predictable revenue model when we were kind of outlining, the outbound versus the inbound versus the marketing and kind of the strategy. So when I was thinking about this topic, the kind of the terms that you would see a lot 5 years ago was the funnels, the sales funnel. And you don't really hear that anymore nowadays. It's more of a flywheel versus a funnel, because you're talking the things that used to work in terms of outbound email approaches. They can still work, but you have to tweak them a little bit, right? What we've been seeing nowadays is more newsletters. We used to see blogs kind of in between that. We used to see case studies. Now we're seeing a lot less case studies, and we're seeing more podcasts or something along those lines. So I really wanted to dive into what I've been seeing, from the past 5 or 10 years. Even face-to-face selling is totally different nowadays than it used to be. When we used to be at Coyote, you would tell somebody, "Hey, I'm going to be in San Francisco next week. Can I swing by your office?" And you'd have 3-5 meetings lined up, and it wasn't that hard to do. Nowadays, to get an in-person meeting, it's a totally different game, even if you know the person. So how do you, back to some of the topics that we were talking about, building real relationships, how do you get over those roadblocks or hurdles? So that's really why I wanted to kind of dive into this a little bit more, is how do we kind of jump and level up quicker in terms of like making the right connections with the right people.
Awesome. So talk to me a little bit about what you see as different trends or what's working differently now than it may have 5 or 10 years ago from a go-to-market perspective.
I think partnership selling. I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased because I kind of made a shift from sales into partnership in general. But like, I see a lot of people in the partnership role that has like 5, 10, 20 years of experience, because a lot of it is how can you co-market and absorb customers where it makes sense, right? If it's integrations or wherever it might be. That's one thing that I think is key. Relationship selling is always going to be like very important. But I think one shift that you probably have noticed too is like people always used to talk about ICPs, like the ideal client profiles. And then it kind of shifted into like, okay, the ICP is like the organization, right? But now we need to kind of focus on the persona. So what do we do in terms of like an account-based marketing strategy to focus on that account, but really on the person within that account? So within the last 5 years, now you're actually focusing on like the people in the organization and what they care about versus the organization, and maybe like there's differences, right, in how you help somebody versus how you bring ROI to a company. So really being able to quantify the ROI. And now what I'm seeing, and you probably see this a ton too, since you have a podcast, user generated content. So really working on like what I'm focusing on right now is like micro influencers.
Yeah.
Like people have 5, 10, 20,000 like followers, and having them kind of be like the extension of your team. And that's something I've noticed more within the last like 12 months, 2 years than ever before, really. I mean, there's obviously like in all these like media channels outside of it too, like in trucking, like I didn't really understand how Reddit was such like a important source of content. And it wasn't like that really before. Now there's TikTok and YouTube and Facebook. So like coming up with some sort of like user content, user guided content is, I think, like the next kind of signal that like folks in transportation or in SaaS in general really need to double down on, because that's the way that they're going to kind of have to maybe not have so many sales folks on their team, but have kind of like an extension of their sales team outward that actually like, focus on these problems on a daily basis and have a little bit more trust on their network.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this just based on what works for us and what works for other clients that we do consulting with. And in a nutshell, you need to be in the room when buying decisions are made. And oftentimes what you notice is you're only in that room actually with someone when you schedule a meeting. And meetings are hard to come by. You need to have a really good value proposition for someone to want to take that meeting. You get your 30 minutes and now decisions are made, right? But if you're not doing all those things that you just mentioned, partnership sales, leaning on different people in the account, marketing to a person, marketing to the account, seeing them face to face. If you don't have user generated content, brand driven stuff that's cohesive, we're those 7 or 8 different things to market to Gabe for him to bring me up during a buying decision. Back in the day, man, you just make a cold call. So you send an email, right? That's just a different game. And buyers are much more sophisticated in terms of where they go to make a decision because there's so many more data points. And so if I go and look up data points about you and I can't find them, you're probably not going to be in that decision, man. Like you got X'd. You're not going to be part of it. So it's tough.
Yeah, and we used to use I've used Zoom Info, Apollo, 6sense. There's so many tools out there, right? That like kind of gives you those like signals. But like you mentioned, like, and this has been like a shift the last 5 years, or like a signal trend where like, if people are looking to buy and they're like, there's so much more, like you mentioned, there's so much more content out there nowadays that like they can make the decision before they even talk to anybody, like whether they're going on G2 or putting some Google searches together. Buyers are so much more educated, but also they have so much more knowledge now based on like what's available to them on the internet. So that's crucial when it comes to that. And like, it's all about timing too, right? When I use like Zoom Info and 6sense, like you'd get like a signal of like, hey, somebody was on your website or they were on a certain landing page. And that, as a salesperson, time is everything. You need to be able to like get them on the phone within like five or 10 minutes of them like submitting a form or them just kind of perusing the certain landing pages. So yeah, I mean, I think like when the person is looking to buy something, they already kind of have an idea of like the 2 or 3 vendors. So you might be already out based on kind of like you not getting the right content to them at the right time, or maybe not even getting like the stakeholders, right? Sometimes like people just focus on one person. They think this person can like make all of the decisions, but then they don't ask like for the other roles that are impacted into this buying process to get a meeting with them too. Like you need to be able to like introduce yourself, the company, your solutions to everybody, not just to like 1 or 2 people, because they're all going to be talking, at the end of the day, like how we're going to make this decision. And if you're not able to answer the questions ahead of time or in front of them, they're not going to have the answers when they're in there together, especially if you only sold to like 2 out of like the 6 people that are being impacted.
Typically, the interesting thing about a market like the one that we're in today, so it is extremely challenging to add net new opportunities. It doesn't matter what you're selling, freight or software or whatever. When markets work in that manner, typically there are more buyers involved in the buying decision because it's more of a risk if it doesn't work. So where I might just sell to Gabe in a market where it's just really easy and there's not as much pressure and we're making a ton of money, now it's Gabe and all of Gabe's counterparts and the CFO and all these people weighing, is this the one software provider that we're going to onboard this quarter or this year? And it's just a very different environment than one that is very cash rich. It is way more competitive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to go down that route too, like the ROI that kind of you need to instill, people are against change, right? Like no matter what. So the change management aspect, whether like you're a broker and you need to like service can only get you so far, right? Saying that you're going to provide better service than somebody else, or like if you're charging them a little bit less on the load or whatever it might be, like you really need to have like, that's what we talked about previously, is like your unique differentiator. And that could just be you as a person and how you interact with them and like the way you make them feel about, the service that you're providing them. Obviously there needs to be a little bit more on top of that, but like you need to show how the change management is going to provide them like a valuable return, not just something small, and how it's going to provide like other departments the value as well. But yeah, change management, that's like something I've, within the last 5 years, like you mentioned, there's more people involved. There's people that are like intentionally are being blockers or that kind of want to impede the change. And you have to kind of figure out, you have to be creative and find ways to kind of work around it or ask them like tough questions really at first, right? About like timing. And I saw like a LinkedIn post today about like a strategy of just attacking these accounts that might be closed loss, but reaching out to somebody that was involved in the process, because there's always a champion in there that sees kind of like the vision for the solution for the problem that you're solving for. But you really need to kind of dig deep to find out like who that champion is and really BFF them, and do whatever you can, go to lunch with them, but be authentic while you do that too, right? Like, because people could see through that and you can get used in certain ways, but like you always have to find that champion, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 of them, and stick to them, and ask them the hard questions, like, what do I need to do to help you with this process? And sometimes people just have a tough time asking real questions, which they should do upstream, instead of like waiting until like the objection.
Totally. So I want to go ahead and wrap here with a couple of notes I took and then see if there's anything else that you want to add before we close. So one of the things you mentioned was there being more of a flywheel versus a funnel, and also looking at the trends and using those trends as signals. So oftentimes you got top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel that still exists today, but there are so many other things happening, interacting with an account before it goes to close one. So how do you make sure that you're hitting all of those different areas of the flywheel to get the results you're looking for? You mentioned, obviously, in your role, driving partnerships. Partnerships matter. They can help you decrease your customer acquisition costs and potentially have a more effective sales force where you're able to, in a collaborative way, bring in opportunities that make sense for both partners. You also mentioned account-based strategy. So you're focusing on accounts, but also the persona and that actual person behind that account. So selling to Gabe specifically, he might work for this org, but how do I market directly to him? And then Buyers are more educated. And so you have to really know what you're talking about because they can go get a bunch of really good data points before they ever talk to you. So anything else you want to chime in on when you think about how go-to-market trends have changed before we wrap up?
Just based on what you just said too, like referrals is key. And whether that's like referrals, people that are customers that are referring you or people within the industry, I think that's gold. You know, when you get some sort of like referral, you know that like when I get a referral for something, I'm definitely going to either see a demo or talk to the person, hold a conversation because like I know it's coming from a good place. And then data, like we didn't really talk about that too much, but data is king when it comes to go to market, just in general, whether you want to do A/B testing or benchmarking for the future on different like strategies that you want to approach on. Make sure to collect that data and review it like every quarter, every year to tweak it because it's going to change and you can't do something now that you know 3 years from now and expect it to work.
That's awesome, man. Well, Gabe, I really appreciate you taking some time to jam here today on Sales Bites. Really good information. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Will.